Hey guys, how are you? Welcome to Principles of Management week number 2. So let me give you the recap. This is my update video. I want to give you the recap of what happened week number 1, kind of what's happening week number 2, and then kind of take a preview of week number 3. Week 1, thank you guys for your participation. I am reading through the introduction post and going through all the stuff. Thank you for those that replied to my introduction. It is a pleasure to meet you guys. I appreciate your effort in the class. I do recognize that my class may be structured a little different than what you are used to. But I feel like it works for us and had a lot of positive feedback in the past with other students. So I continue to do it because it works. So I do a weekly video like this. You'll see this in your discussion post as one of the discussions. And then you reply to it. Just kind of give me an update of your life, what's going on in your life, your topics, all that stuff, whatever you want to talk about. I read through every single one of them. So please note that, I'm going there and I'm reading them all. I'm highly involved in my courses. So if you've never taken me before, know that this isn't your typical online class where I'm just pushing out information and throwing out a grade. I get involved with my courses. So, all right, that being said, let's talk about last week. It went well. I will be grading your introduction videos here soon. I want to let you know what's going on in my life. This Monday, so today's Tuesday, yesterday, spring for 2023 registration opened up. So this morning, yesterday I had actually a commitment, so I wasn't able to be in the office, but when I got back today, as you can imagine, my email box was completely full with students looking to sign up for spring. So I sent out an email to all business students letting them know that registration has begun. And I put a link to my calendar so you can schedule an appointment with me. Currently, I am missing a full-time instructor in the business management program. The person that had been there, her name is Miss Grace Beam, has been promoted to a different role within the school. We are currently in the process of interviewing some instructors to kind of take that position. But that being said, we had two other full-time instructors and they're not available at this time. So yours truly will be the only advisor available for the next few weeks, which creates a little bit of a dilemma because not only am I teaching the class, I teach economic development courses for industry, so I go out and do corporate trainings. Plus, I manage, what it is that I do on a daily basis here. And of course, now I will be advising over 400 students, returning students. So my calendar, if you can imagine, is filling up extremely fast. As soon as I sent that email, I probably received 30 confirmation for dates and time slots for that. So I want to make sure that you get a shot to register. If you're in business, then I will be your advisor for the next few weeks. If not, then down the road we'll have the other two full-time advisors, and hopefully in the next semester we'll have the fourth actually full-time instructor on board. So in the meantime, bear with me. Be patient with me. I have a lot of stuff on my plate. So I know you guys are very understanding, and I appreciate that. So let's talk about this week. This week you got two chapters. You got your discussion. Chapter 3, it's going to deal with the macro environment of business. And we will look at this a little closer next week in our discussion, but just want to give you an understanding of what that means and what we're talking about. The macro environment of business, or the big picture. So think of macro as a big picture and micro as a small picture. Some of you who continue your career will eventually take macroeconomics, the big picture of economics, and then you'll take microeconomics, which would be the smaller, the more focused in picture. In this chapter, we're looking at the 5 elements of an organization from the macro environment, the big picture. And we're going to take a look at some of those things that make an organization have a competitive environment. So we're going to look closely at the external part of that, the outside, not the inside. So as a previous entrepreneur, one of the big questions people would ask me is, I have this great idea. I don't know how to get it started. And I would say, well, let's do some research. Let's look at your environment. And I don't know why people think if I open up a store, people are just going to find me. Or if I open up a website and I start selling online, people are just going to show up out of the blue. They're just going to be like, oh, website. And you don't know how many billions of websites exist or how many billions of storefronts exist. So we look at the external environment. All right. So I like to use an example, which I will use next week more in detail. And we will, in our discussion, do an analysis called a SWOT analysis. But I don't want to get into too much detail because that's for next week. But know that that is important information to keep in the back of your mind. And plus, important information for my business students, because this is something that you will need in your actual career. All right. The other part of this is chapter 4, which talks about ethical perspectives. Excuse me. The ethical perspective is how you view the world. This isn't about what's right or what's wrong, black or white. This is sort of that mindset of what helps you make decisions. So in our discussion, you are going to read through the ethical perspectives, which you can find on page 74 and 76, and then 82 and 84. And it gives you a few ethical perspectives, like, what is your ethical perspective of life and the view of things? Some people will be like, well, I'm a faith-driven person, and they use that term a lot. Well, in the business world, we'll use the term a deontological perspective. This perspective of deontological perspectives really comes from the root word dio, which is deontological, meaning dio, and the Latin word dio sounds a lot like in the Spanish word Dios, which is God. So in this perspective, you're saying that you have a higher power that sort of dictates what's right and what's wrong. And you base your decisions on that perspective. Now, please understand that none of us can adhere to just one perspective. We bounce around depending on the situation, the people involved, what's happening, and what's the condition we're making the decision on. And then there's another one that I like to use called utilitarianism. Utilitarianism is a perspective that views things from a macro perspective, the greater good. And a lot of times people who make a decision on this, and many of us that have had situations where we've made the decision, we think about the end result will justify the means, right? And I like to use the example personally of my parents. My parents came to this country, as you probably heard in my introduction. They came to this country from a country called Guatemala. Now, when they came, it wasn't the heated debate that we're having today about immigration. It was a lot more lax. It was a lot more easier than it is today, a lot less confusing, a lot less dynamics. But my parents came ultimately to this country illegally. I was the firstborn American. Because of me, my parents were able to acquire residency, eventually citizenship of this country. But my parents were left with making a decision. And they approached that decision, maybe not consciously, but when you study it, they approached that decision based on a utilitarian perspective. In other words, the end result of this decision is going to be greater than what it takes us to get there. So in my parents' position, they said, yes, I am going to break the law. Yes, I am going to make some mistakes in the process. I am going to do some things that are not correct. But having my son in a better position than I am in, that justifies what I've done to get there. I'm not saying that's right or wrong. And in a deontological perspective, people will be like, that's wrong. I understand that that's the perspective that people have, but then I address this question to you. If you're sitting there thinking like, well, I don't agree with that, they broke a law, I then put you in what we call an ethical dilemma. So, for example, most people would be like, it's not right to kill a child, right? Most of us agree to that. But if put in a position that changes the circumstances, as in you are driving a train. You're a conductor. You're driving a train and it's going down a rail. And then the brakes fail and you have a decision to make. You either turn, this is my left, I know it's probably your right, but this is my left. If you turn left, you will kill a child. But if you turn right, you will kill 10 adults. What would you do? How would you approach that decision? The other question I would ask is, what made you think that? Why did you make that decision? What was the dictating values that you adhere to that said, no, I'd rather do this? Utilitarianists will be like, well, that's 10 families. I don't know what that means. That could be 10 18-year-olds. That could be 10 19-year-olds who haven't started life. And who is this child? And there's so many questions to ask there. But if we are limited with information, as in this case we are, then you have to make a decision based on the immediate information that you get. So then we lean on our ethical perspectives, right? We can't investigate. We can't stop the train. The train's going to go left or it's going to go right. And no matter what it is, someone or some people are going to die. And you're the conductor. So what do? That's an ethical dilemma. And in those dilemmas, you have to lean towards your ethical perspective to make that decision. You don't have the information you need. Another one that I like to bring up is, is lying okay? Is lying ever okay? Some people will say, no, lying is wrong. Honesty is the best policy. But then we can change that perspective if we then put ourselves in a situation where you go, well, because I typically come across people that say, well, lying is wrong, it's the wrong thing to do. But then I'll ask, do you tell or have you told your kids that Santa was real? Well, but that's a white lie, and it's like, it's for the fantasy, so now you've changed your perspective because a minute ago you said it was wrong. It's always wrong, and honesty is always the best policy. So that's why I mean that we cannot adhere to one perspective only, and that's why it's important for us to understand in what situation we make what decision. So this is really a self-analyzing project. You have to really consider yourself in these situations to say, why do I do that? Why do I make that decision? The last one I will leave you with is the concept of, will you ever break the law for someone or for something? And I use the concept of, like, if we were in crisis in this world and there was no other solution, and your child needed a medication, like, unfortunately we lost a lot of loved ones during this past pandemic, but if you had no other option but to break the law and steal a medication to save your loved one from dying, would you be able to do that? Would you do that? I can't tell you what you would do and wouldn't do and what's the dictating factor in that. I could only try to put you in a position where you think through that process and say no or yes, and this is why, and categorize it in the perspective that's appropriate. So I hope this helps in understanding the chapters that we're reviewing. I hope that you take time to self-analyze. Once again, I want to let you know that it is important to really focus on your discussions. Please don't give me one-sentence answers. I want a solid paragraph. I want meaning. I want thought. I want you to put some thought to this. It's important for you to go through this journey. So I'm excited to read it. I'm excited to read what your thoughts are. I'm excited to see what you think. Is it okay to lie? Is it okay to tell your kids, yeah, Santa's real. The Tooth Fairy came in last night, or the Easter Bunny's coming around. Like, whatever lie that we tend to use, is how do you get past that? How do you do it if you are the dialectical thinker? Or are you using or are you using a egotistical perspective? I'm only thinking of myself. I can control my kids by telling them Santa's watching you. So it's just a thought. I'm not trying to influence what decisions you make or make you feel bad about the decisions you make. I just want you to think about why you make them. All right, guys, other than that, I need a serious cup of coffee. It's been an extremely busy morning. Let me show you my lunch. This is how busy I've been. This is what I'm having for lunch after I'm done recording. So But don't feel bad for me. I have a few pounds that I need to lose anyway. So other than that, I hope you're having a wonderful week, guys. It is cold. As you can tell, I got the thick sweater on. It's cold out there. It's cold this morning. I think we have finally reached the fall. Take care, guys. We'll see you next week. I hope you're having a wonderful time and you are enjoying this journey. Take care. Bye.